Hi, I'm here on Casey Street with some witnesses of the UFO sighting. They're going to have a reenactment of what they saw that day.
So we walked down here and looked up, and it was coming out to the clouds, seen something. And then my dad came over, and at that point I asked him what was that. We looked up and started staring at it for a little while, and he couldn't figure it out. He didn't know what it was. So we started walking down the street this way, and it was just hovering. It wasn't making any noise.
When we looked at it, it was coming out through the clouds, and when we got that, it started to come down the street down there, and then we needed us, and we started walking, and we started going up.
Started going towards Cabot Tower. It was going really slow down the street, and then after that, when it started turning, it started going really fast. Like it didn't take long at all for it to get to Cabot Tower. Probably not even 2 minutes. And then we just didn't know what to do. We went out the street. Dad wanted to see if he could get a better view looking that way, but it was gone. That's it.
Okay, I was just coming out of the Kenpo dojo when my son said to me, "Dad, what's that?" And they were pointing up into the air. I thought I was going to tell him airplane or a helicopter, but when I looked up, I couldn't tell him any of those things because what I seen was like a round hotel and with windows, 3 rows of windows, and it was turning counterclockwise slowly. So I told him, I said, "Boys, that's a UFO. Don't take your eyes off it because you may never get to see another one again in your life." So I came out here and I watched it moving slowly down the road, down in that direction, down over the hill, and I started walking down the road. I didn't have to run because it was going slow enough where I was able to just walk down the road until it got so far away. Then I started running after it, and it went straight down that way. That I don't believe that hotel was there, but then no, 1995 that wasn't there, and it went right across the harbour right there, and went up by went to the left of those white tanks, and went up there by that hill. And if you could follow me here, we went straight across the Narrows, up right over the top of Cabot Tower, and then it kept going to the left, following that horizon, that skyline, the shoreline up there, or the horizon. Went down that way, and it kept going that way. And until it got behind all those houses over there, I couldn't see it anymore. So that's when I ran back up the hill. My 2 sons were up there yelling at me to come back, Dad, because we're going to miss the bus, they were saying to me. So I couldn't see it anymore from here anyway, so I thought if I went back up on the Merchant Road and looked over the Merchant Road, that I might get another view of it, but I still couldn't get a view of it from there anyway. But it took 2 or 3 minutes from the time I first seen it till the time it went out of sight over there. It was about 30 feet high, about 50 feet in circumference, and it had lights coming out of the windows. You could see the windows really clear, and there were lights on the bottom and lights on the top, and it was revolving pretty slowly, rotating pretty slowly.
And then it just took off?
And no sound at all. No, it never just took off. I never seen it going, really fast. It just went out of sight over there behind the houses. And it was keeping like the same elevation above the earth at all times. Maybe about 100 feet in altitude the whole time. Wherever, like up on top of that hill over there. When it got up top of the hill, it still stayed 100 feet over top of the hill.
So if you could just tell us again in your own words what happened that day, what you saw, and what the date and time of that event was.
Okay, the date was October 26, 1995. It was approximately 6:40 p.m. in the evening. It was dark, and we were coming out of our Kenpo martial arts practice, and well, my sons had left a minute earlier than I did, and as I was walking out through the door, the boys sang out to me and said, "Dad, what's that?" And when I looked at them, they were pointing up into the sky. So I looked up into the sky thinking I was going to tell them it was a helicopter or a plane, but as I looked up, I realized I couldn't tell them either of those things. So I told them what I thought it was a UFO, and so I told them not to take their eyes off it for a second and always remember what they were looking at, because they'd probably never get a chance to see another one again. So as it was coming down from the clouds, it kind of almost stopped for a couple of seconds, it seemed like, and hovering about 100 feet over our heads. But it slowly moved down towards the downtown area, moving down, going south down over Casey Street, and remaining at the same altitude. And there were lights on it, on top and on bottom. There were windows all around. About, as far as I can remember, there was 3 rows of windows. I could see light. I could make out the windows and light coming out through the windows. And the thing about the lights is when they seemed to be blinking on and off, but I'm not sure if they were blinking on and off, or it was just the way the craft was turning around. It would go out, the light would go out as it go on the other side. But it went across the harbor, and it was traveling about 35-45 miles per hour, I estimate. And it went up on top of the south side hills, where it veered over towards the Narrows, crossed the Narrows, and went straight up over top of Cabot Tower. And there it kind of veered down towards the north, up towards Kitty Vitty, up towards the lake. And from that point on, I lost view of it.
About how long did you actually have this sighting? How long did you actually see this object?
From the first sighting, it lasted approximately 2.5 minutes, possibly 3.
And how old were your sons at the time?
My youngest son was 6 and my oldest boy was 8.
How big do you think this object was?
I estimated it to be about 50 feet in circumference and approximately 30 feet high. It was circular.
You sent me a letter in...
Was the top and the bottom were not... It wasn't a round ball. It had a flat top and a flat bottom.
How did you first hear about my interest in UFOs?
I believe it was one of the radio stations that told me that I could get in contact with a UFO investigator. I believe it was at Oz FM. I called a few radio stations.
How did they react to...
They said that they had gotten a couple of calls during that week, or at least one. And I called Evening Telegram and I asked the lady there how many, reports of UFOs she gets, and she says that they do get a handful within a year. Every year they get a handful of reports.
Did you call any other media people?
I called Breakfast Television on Channel 10. They were doing a TV show on UFOs, and I was on the air on that show on the telephone. It was a telephone interview, and I gave them my story.
You told me earlier that you called another newspaper or something, and they
Evening
didn't have
Telegram.
they didn't have a positive reaction to your
No,
story?
there was a lady there answered the telephone, and when I told her my experience, she started laughing.
How did that make you feel?
I felt angry and I hung up the phone on her.
I remember we spoke on the phone, and I asked you to send me a letter, sort of a narrative story of your sighting, and you sent me this letter. I don't have it with me today, but in it I was very impressed by the fact that your occupation as a land surveyor made you very aware of the distances involved and the actual size of the object. Could you just talk a little bit about that? How many degrees it may have been in the sky and that sort of a thing?
Okay, sure. I've been surveying for 20 years with my brother, and I can pretty good judge of distances and angles and heights, and so I gathered that my first sighting of it was at approximately 80 degrees in the sky, coming from the northeast, and it was just not very much higher over the St. Clair's Hospital, so I knew that St. Clair's Hospital is about 8 or 9 stories high, so that's 70 or 80 feet. And so I figured this must be about 100 feet up in the air, about another 20, 30 feet higher than St. Clair's Hospital. And I could tell from that then the size to be about 30 feet in height because of my view of the hospital and the object together. I could judge it to be about 30 feet in height and 50 feet in circumference.
When you sent me the letter describing your sighting, you also sent me a drawing that you made of this object from what you remember. I brought a copy of that drawing with me here today, and I just sort of present it to you and ask you, is this the object that you drew, and is this what you remember from the object that you drew that you saw that day?
Yeah, but this is the top pair.
Oh, okay.
This was the bottom, the lights down the bottom. This is the object that I drew, yes. Brings back memories. Yeah, it was like sometimes the structure here would appear to be silvery. Other times it would look black almost. It would almost like it was hard to get a really good feeling of the color, and no, to this day I still can't say what color it was.
Do you boys remember what color it was?
No, it's like a dark gray. That's all I remember. Like, my memory seems like a dark gray.
Yeah, it was really hard to get a feel for the color, but you could see the different windows. What about you, Joseph? What do you remember?
I can't remember much at all. I was
No,
only 6 years old.
you were only 6.
Yeah. Basically, all I remember is what you told me.
All right.
So the boxes that are all windows, were they all lit up?
Yes.
Yeah. three different colors.
So that's why you said described it earlier as a floating hotel.
Yeah. It looked like a big hotel to me. Well, a small hotel.
And what color were the lights?
Red, yellow, and blue. I'm not sure which order, but they were all in a pattern.
What lights
Red.
are you talking about? Those ones?
All of them.
Okay.
They were all
Bottom
the,
lights.
the
Bottom
bottom
lights.
and the top were the same.
Yeah, but what about the lights in the window? That's what I thought you were
Oh,
referring to.
they were like regular light, like white or yellow, like like you'd see from a house.
Right.
Yeah. Almost. It was more white than yellow.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, this is a drawing of the object myself and my two sons, Joshua and Joseph, saw on the night of October 26, 1995 at 6:40 p.m. in the evening. And it's the best this drawing I could give from my recollection.
Would you boys agree that that might be what?
It's pretty close to what I think too. The only thing different is a few more lights.
Yeah.
Like
And there possibly were.
I'd say there were.
Okay.
How did this experience change your life at all? Seeing this object.
Oh, well, it just gave me a. It just intensified my belief in UFOs. I always did believe in them. No, that it just guaranteed it. I mean, confirmed it. My belief.
Any changes to your life?
Not really. My life, still changed. I was just growing up, 8 years old, so
Have
didn't
you
make
ever-
much difference. I
have
just
you
wanted
ever-
to catch the bus.
Have you ever told any other kids your own age about seeing
Not
this
many.
object? No.
Not really.
I tell everyone.
How did they respond? How do most people respond to you telling them that you saw this?
Half are skeptical, half believe. Yeah, about 50-50, I believe.
Have you ever met any other people here in Newfoundland who've seen similar objects or had
Yes,
known other people to have
my,
similar experiences?
My girlfriend's daughter, she believes she's had a UFO experience around the same time that I did. Same night even, maybe.
Saw the same thing, maybe?
Possibly. In different part of town. Where was she? Well, I
don't
believe
know.
she was...
She was living in Mount Borough.
Mount Pearl.
Thank you.